What's going on, everybody? This is Brent0331. This is episode 7 of Interview with Warfighters. And on this episode, we have Sergeant First Class Gillespie, United States Army. Some of you know him as Randall with Grunt Proof. But he is here to talk about his military career with us. Randall, thanks for coming on today, buddy.
Yeah, how's it going, man? It's a pleasure to be back.
Yeah, man. Likewise. Let's see. Let's get this set up here. All right, so let's pick it up. So let me just first say that you are the very first U.S. Army guy that we've had on here for Interview with Warfighter. So congratulations.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's something to be proud of or not, but it is what it is.
We'll see. We'll see.
All right, man. Well, let's back up. So you came into the service in 2003. Let's back up to when you were in high school or middle school, wherever it was. What steered you in the direction of enlisting in the United States Army?
It was a couple things. I graduated in I think 2000. Typical loser guy, especially down on the Gulf Coast. Wasn't really doing anything with life. Was in and out of pretty cool jobs, but nothing stable. 19 years old, trying to find my path in life, my mission, and just couldn't find one. 9/11 happened, and at that time a recruiter had already been hounding me since I graduated, and so 9/11 wasn't like the main thing, but it was after that. It was always there, thinking about guys my age are out there doing amazing things, just giving it up. And I would think, well, I'm not doing anything, I'm just hanging out here being a loser. So combination of that. And I think I was really fortunate in the fact that I recognized I had nothing going for me and I needed to get out and do something. So I just was bored one day doing nothing, called up the same recruiter that had been hounding me for a year. And it's cool. I was still calling him by his first name and everything. And I was like, hey, I want to do that Army thing. So, talk to me. And he was waiting on that call. I think he had a feeling. I was going to call him eventually. He was like, yep, Randall, I remember you. I'll come right over. And so, then he came by to see me. And I think, we talked for a bit. I mulled it over a little bit. And then one day I quit my job and went straight to the recruiting station, walked in there like, I want to do this. And that was it. Came home, I was living with my mom at the time, and she's like, how was your day? I was like, yeah, great. I quit my job. She's like, oh, another one. Okay. And I'm like, yeah. And I joined the Army. So, at a time of two wars were going on. So, we were ramping up for Iraq, but it was, not the best time to be joining the Army Infantry.
Yeah. So let's talk about this. So obviously, today's U.S. military is all volunteer force. This isn't Vietnam. There is no draft. So, I mean, one, you got to make that conscious decision of like, hey, I want to go into the armed forces, particularly during time of war. And then two, you're volunteering to be a grunt, or at least that's what you're orienting yourself in your career. So like what steered you into going into the infantry?
I don't know. It was, I knew if I was going to do the military, I wanted to do a military job. So, computer and IT stuff wasn't really that big. At least around the group I was with, it was kind of just like, I remember saying, referencing like some of the movies I knew, like Band of Brothers and Full Metal Jacket. I was like, what do those guys do? And he's like, yeah, those are infantry grunts there. Back then it was all still the stereotypes. Like, yeah, first one's in, they do this and that and get to blow stuff up and shoot stuff. And I was like, cool, I want to do that. So I didn't even, we didn't really have Google, but I didn't go read about it or anything. Like I had read some of, I think it was Marchenko's books. So I kind of knew about that world, but wasn't really read on it. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds cool. Go do grunt stuff.
I find it funny that Full Metal Jacket's one of the movies that steered you towards joining the Army Infantry. I mean, where did Lee Ermey, gunnery sergeant, God rest his soul, steer you wrong, my brother?
Yeah, all the recruiting stations were right next to each other, and I looked at the Marines, and I don't know, on the Gulf Coast, where we have Keesler Air Force Base right down the road from where I grew up. So everybody and all my buddies in ROTC and stuff, they were going into the Air Force. So Army and Marines were the outcasts. But we had a couple Coast Guard guys too, but um I don't know. I considered the Marines, I like their uniforms better, especially their dress uniforms at the time. We had the ugly green things, but I don't know. Maybe I was a softie. I was like, I want to go do grunt stuff, but like at 80%. I don't want to be like 120% all the time. I don't think I can keep that up. So,
That's
but I'll
definitely
say though, I was definitely let down by our basic training. Like I wasn't assuming it would be exactly like Vietnam veterans yelling at me, but the Army Infantry OSIT, the one station unit training, it was tough, especially for a coddled Western kid. But I was in pretty good shape and I had a sense of humor. So there was a lot of times where I was like, this is it. Like I was kind of waiting for, somebody just kick me in the back of the head or like really mess me up and like the pain. And it was just like, okay, well, there's guys doing worse than me. So I thought I was a lot worse, doing pretty good.
what so I know very little about like the Army's entry level training. Can you spin us up on that? Because like in the Marine Corps, you go through recruit training, and then immediately upon graduation, you go to the School of Infantry. Every Marine, um, whether you're a freaking mechanic or a fucking motor T jock or a grunt, everybody goes to School of Infantry, and non-infantry get 2 weeks of Marine combat training before they go to their MOS school, and then grunts stay there longer. So how does it work in the Army?
Yeah, well, in the Army, you have your basic, which is 9 weeks. That's your basic soldier training, and that's like all over the states. And for at least I don't know how they do it anymore. It's been a while, but the combat arms, they have one station unit training. So instead of going to a basic and then going to like your specified, what do we call it? The advanced training, you just stay at the same place. So you have same barracks, same drill sergeants, same. I mean, nothing really changes pretty much. And so for the infantry, it's the same way. So every combat arms, they have their own time frame. For us at the time, it was like 9 weeks of your basic stuff. We would do basically a trophy for everybody. Graduation ceremony. All right, you guys are done with basic now. We're going to infantry training. Nothing has changed. You guys all still suck. So from then it was about I think it was 5 weeks. The Army has changed that since then. Now they do like a 20 or 22 week one station unit training, at least for the infantry. So it's a lot longer. Um, you know, I, from what I've been told, they get a lot deeper into the infantry stuff. So yeah, pretty much 16 weeks total. About 5 months, I believe, of learning how to march and shoot. And then after those 9 weeks, it's pretty much everything's the same. You just start to learn a little bit more about being a grunt. And it's all kind of like the general infantry stuff. Like we got into it last time we talked. You were saying you guys were kind of going towards a super grunt, like a jack of all trades type of grunt. So we used to separate that. You would go to like a mortar school or a heavy weapons school. And at least starting in 2003, or at least when I was there in 2003, it was all everybody's a grunt until graduation. And you would kind of hit every weapon system and all the stuff. And then I believe since then, like I was an 11 X-ray. So we have 11 Bravo infantry, and you used to have like mortars, Charlies, and all that. And then when I went through, it was 11 X-ray. So you're going to go learn how to be a basic grunt. And then after that, you'll go to whatever duty station and they'll just teach you whatever you're doing there. So it was kind of like just a run of the mill grunt stuff, and then you specialize kind of at your unit.
Interesting. So, like when you find out like what unit you're getting sent to, or do you have a choice in the matter, or like how's that all work in the Army?
You do the wish list, and I haven't met anybody that got anything they put on their 3 duty stations wish list, especially once the global war on terror was hot and heavy. It was pretty much needs of the Army. And so what sucked for me was I went to basic when I showed up for MEPS. the recruiter showed me a recruiting video of airborne school. And he was like, well, first he asked me, he's like, hey, you want to go airborne? We can add it to your contract. And this was like the day I'm about to get on the bus to go to basic. And I was like, what is that? He's like, yeah, they jump out of planes and shoot stuff. So you're like a grunt, but you jump out of planes. I was like, all right. He showed me a quick video and I was like, yeah, let's do that. That looks awesome. Even better. So I got airborne put in my contract, but I was still, so I got the school put into my contract. So they're like, as long as you make it through basic, you don't get hurt, you can go straight to airborne school. And that's what I did. But I didn't get any kind of airborne unit put into my contract. So, yeah. So, on one hand of that, I was bummed because when I was graduating basic training, they read my name and was like, you're going to airborne and then you're going to Germany. And I was like, we have airborne units in Germany still? And then I was wrong. I went to Germany to a freaking mechanized infantry unit after airborne, which bummed me out at first. But later on, after having team leaders and squad leaders that came from the 82nd and all that, I was like, yeah, I didn't want to go to airborne unit. The mech world ended up being pretty cool.
So how was your mech unit? Like you rifle squad with Bradleys, or how's that all work?
Yeah, it's weird. We changed it every deployment, it seemed like. And I think that came down to the BCT commanders, what they wanted to do based off of where we were deploying. But traditionally, your mechanized infantry, it's all focused around Bradleys and 113s. So it's all like your armored tracked vehicles. And you still have the same people on a squad, so it's still a 9-man infantry squad. And we kind of follow the same doctrine as far as who carries what weapon initially. And then, of course, once you find out where you're deploying to and what the commanders want to accomplish, usually the companies will kind of adjust from there. So when I went to Baghdad my first time in 03, I showed up as just a PV2 rifleman carrying the radio. Yep. And then they upgraded me to a saw gunner, like most privates get to do, which was awesome. I loved the saw. And then I'd say the main difference is, back then you had your what we called mounted and dismounted guys in a company. So you had, how was the platoon set up? You had like 2 dismounted squads, and then you had about a squad and a half worth of mounted guys that crewed the vehicles. And I can't tell you how many tracks we had per platoon, but I want to say 2 or 3. It really depended on how many vehicles were running at the time, what we were doing. So we experimented with mounted guys and dismounted infantry guys, and then actual gun teams. So like I was on a 240 gun team for a while, which was cool because I upgraded from the saw to the 240 and got to see what gun teams do. Yeah, and I mean, the doctrine is totally changed by now. I don't even know what the hell these mech infantry guys do, but what I learned really quickly was, the mech infantry guys in the army, at least, we have a stereotype of being a little more lax. And it kind of depends on the company and your platoon. Like I think our platoon, we had like one of the highest PT standards in the battalion. The Army's max at the time was 300, and like our platoon standard was like, you got to score 280. That's what we want you to get. So, we were never hua like 82nd guys, or like you guys, we didn't live and breathe it. It's like once we got off duty, we were like, I told you in the email, we were like doing Americans in Germany stuff, like a lot of unbecoming of the unit stuff. But once it came down to getting to business, at least in my platoon, I'd say we did pretty good at breaking that stereotype. Like I had a lot of good guys, and I like to say a lot of it came from the leaders we have. It all comes down to your leadership. So, all my squad and team leaders in the beginning, they came from the 82nd and the light infantry world. So they were all enjoying having a ride everywhere. They were like, "This is cool. We can carry so much more stuff, so much more firepower and food because we have these tanks with us." But they would still kind of make sure we were good grunts on the ground because those things break down all the time, and you still do dismounted patrols. You got to have infantry out there moving around. So I think we had a pretty good balance of learning how to maneuver with the track vehicles and everything, but not like just rely on them.
So let me just to clarify this. So you get your first unit is in Germany, right? So you go all the way to Germany. So I mean that in itself is essentially a deployment. But once you get there, they send you directly to Iraq.
Yeah. First Armored, Second Brigade Combat Team, and I was under 2-6 Infantry Battalion Alpha Company Assassins. That whole brigade's gone now. It's not in Germany anymore, but they were already deployed. They relieved the third Infantry Division in Baghdad. So 3rd ID was part of the main push, the spearhead. And then, they controlled areas of Baghdad. My guys replaced them. And I had just graduated basic. I think I got out of jump school in like middle to end of August. And then I went home to do hometown recruiting, and I got like 2 weeks off. So like early September, I'm arriving in Germany. And it was pretty much like, I told my mom, yeah, we're almost done with the war, because I watched the invasion on TV because I was a delayed entry guy. So I was bumming watching the invasion on TV, knowing I was missing it. And we all thought it was going to be like the Gulf War. That was like what everybody thought,
Right.
and I got to Germany and got to tell my mom, like, I was wrong. My guys are in Baghdad and I'm going there in like 2 weeks. So I got to Germany. I had 2 weeks, really that short, just to get all my desert equipment issued. We did some training, we got a whole bunch more shots and all that. And then, I was 19, so I could legally drink. So got to party it up in Germany, like an adult. And then it was out the door to meet my unit who was already there, and they had already been there. I can't remember exactly when they relieved the 3rd ID, but they had been there for like 3 to 4 months. So I showed up as like a brand new cherry, and these guys had been there. They're all salty and mad, like, so that was pretty fun. But
Yeah.
yeah,
What was
it's
like?
from the time I came in, was everything I did was hit the ground running. It was pretty cool. I didn't have a lot of sitting around bored time.
What was it like checking into a unit in theater in combat already, and you're a boot, and they've already been there for a few months? That's
Yeah.
gotta suck.
Well, it was creepy. Actually heading to a war zone, how we do it. I don't think, the Hollywood movies, they try to give it, in the Vietnam movies, they try to give it justice. Like, we have these like malls, and back then they could drink and they have all these stuff going on, but then just right down the road, there's bombs and shit going off. So it was weird seeing that from going through Kuwait, flying into Biop, convoying into Baghdad. And it's like, well, I haven't been shot at yet, but we're like in a war zone. So it's kind of creepy. And then, yeah, showing up to my unit, I think I was fortunate because they all gave me a chance, but being a new guy in an infantry unit sucks anyway, especially when they've been there. Like, they came in right after the invasion. So I think they hadn't been into too much hardcore combat. The city was pretty calm after the initial push. So I think if they had been like lighting people up every single day, I think it would have been a lot worse. But it was kind of chill when I showed up. So I had really good leaders that they took me under their wing, and they're like, all right, so you've been through basic. You think you know everything, but you don't know shit. So they did a good job at not protecting me, but taking me in and teaching me stuff instead of just like beating me up and all that. I mean, I got a little bit of hazing and all that, but nothing extreme. It was really more guys just like, all right, idiot, you're going to get people killed if you don't pick this stuff up. So, and I really wanted to be a good grunt. So I was just like, yep, roger that. Like, I had a specialist. My team leader didn't want to talk to me. He was from the 82nd as an E5. So I had a specialist put over me, so I'm like, yep, that's an E4 for us. I'm like, yep, roger that, specialist, treating him like a sergeant, because he could still kill me if he wanted to. But yeah, it was interesting because, like I said, our basic training, we think we know everything. But once you get to your unit, it's on the job training. That's when you really see like, wow, this is what we do. So it was pretty cool, like learning how to be a grunt in a combat zone. So it's like, it was nothing close to the experience, but it reminded me of some of the books I had read about Vietnam. It's like you don't know what you're doing until you get out there in the field, and then the learning curve is extremely sharp. And if you screw up, you could get somebody killed. So it's really about trying to pay attention and do your job right. And they first thing they did, I got my M4, and then they handed me the radio, the old Singars. They're like, "Yeah, you're young and tough. Here you go. Here's that and the radio, and keep up."
So what was your unit's mission there on your first deployment to Iraq?
It was pretty much, that was pretty soon after the push. So, uh, I forgot our doctrine was like clear, hold, and build, something like that. The army came up with, or whoever came up with. And so we were just finishing up clear. Like we would do knock raids every now and then. But it was really just running the checkpoint, like the main checkpoint to the green zone. We called it the MOAC, which stood for Mother of All Checkpoints. So that was kind of our main thing, was running that checkpoint 1 of the green zone. And then we would just rotate through patrols. And it was cool because the checkpoint was mostly boring. A lot of just trying to stay awake. And then whenever we would go to patrols, it was more fun because we did mostly foot patrols. We had a pretty small sector. We had the Tigris River off to our east, right there. Yeah, I think it was Bridge 4 we were at. And so we basically had a square going up, not too large. So we had foot patrols, and we would walk all over that area. And then another mission we had was guarding protected sites. So shortly after the war, they were just figuring out, they called them ICDCs first, the Iraqi Civil Defense Corps. So they were building them up. That was like the Iraqi army in the beginning. And then they were creating the Iraqi police force, which I think we called them IPFs before just IPs. But it was pretty much just Joes with AKs standing at these protected sites all the time, hoping to not get shot at. And we'd stop by and smoke and drink tea with them. And then at night we'd go do patrols, because in the city we had all these ministry buildings like interior and defense and all that. And, they were getting looted like crazy. So they were all mostly blown out by the time I got there. So yeah, checkpoint patrols and lots of OPs and a lot of carrying the radio and M4. And then after a couple months, the saw and 800 rounds of ammo and not firing a shot. It was, after a while, I was like, somebody please shoot at me so I can unload some of this ammo. I was like dying to get shot at. I mean, we had a lot of mortars and rockets, that was the big thing at the time. But at the time, the insurgents were still trying to figure us out. They didn't want to get into firefights with us yet.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, man. Because after the invasion, we transitioned into those, security and stability operations, and I mean, there was not much going on. There was the occasional attack, like the big thing, and this is before IEDs were a thing. Like I remember the big thing the enemy was doing is they were getting on top of overpasses and shooting RPGs at passing convoys. But that was like the biggest threat. Hardly anything was going on. We were going on actual foot patrols with just boonies and deuce gear. And I mean, guys hear that nowadays and think I'm full of shit, but that's exactly what we were doing because it was so calm.
Yeah, yeah, we did a couple of those in our area. There was a Catholic neighborhood down the road. It's most of those people have been murdered since after we left, but yeah, we'd go on patrols right outside the gate, no gear, and just basically like you walk around the fob, not even any extra mags, and then we just carry a radio, like a handheld or something, go get some pizza. And that was like, I mean, that's how the CA guys were rolling around. I didn't know what CA did back then, but they were doing that all the time. They'd be out there in civvies hanging out at the pizza parlors. And yeah, like you said, these days you do that and people, they don't believe it. They're like, no, man, you got to have the full bomb suit and all that stuff on, like 30 guys with you.
All right, man. Well, let's talk redeployment. So you end up leaving Iraq. You guys, I assume, go back to Germany.
Yeah, we all came back to Germany like right before the summer of 2004. So yeah, back to bomb holder, and that was our entire brigade combat team. So close to 5,000 people, mostly combat arms and support. Um, you do the whole 7-day reintegration, which it's at least on our side, it's just a big joke. It's like check the block, don't kill yourself, go talk to people. And they make us see a counselor. We're all like, yeah, we're good because we just want to get off so we can go drink. And then, yeah, like I told you, we did the typical Americans in Germany stuff. So, like, fights downtown and bomb holder Germany. I still go there every now and then to handle business, but it's a tiny German village, like maybe 500 people in the whole area. We got like 4 to 5,000 combat arms dudes coming home there. So they're bored and amped up and thirsty, and they got a lot of money. So it was just chaos. I think I did a pretty good job at staying out of trouble though, somehow. So we had a lot of guys get busted down in rank. I didn't, at least not the first redeployment. Yeah, and then it's like, you get your block leave, you get to go home, and so I went back to the Gulf Coast, and you know, it was funny coming from Baghdad, in Germany, where I could legally drink, to coming back to Mississippi, where my family and other adults that knew me, they didn't care, but I still had to get people to buy me alcohol. It's like there was a couple gas stations I went in, I'd flash my army ID. I'm like, dude, I'm on leave from Baghdad. Like, can I buy some beer? And, it's southern Mississippi. So it was 50-50. But yeah, that was weird. So besides coming back home to the beach, I was like, I can't wait to go back to Germany so I can go into a bar and drink, like a big boy. Yeah, and then the rest of the year, like the army, we would do well, actually, my unit did 15 months. I did close to a year because I showed up as a new guy, but they had been extended to stay out there. So the army was trying to do the year-long deployments with about a year home with train up and all that. So uh, most of the time in Germany was more gunnery and field training, which we did it all in Eastern Germany, Grafenwehr. So I know in the States, at least on the Army side, they would go to the range a lot more frequently. Um, and then they would do field training a lot more frequently. So they might go to the field for a week or two, and then they get the weekend off and come back to garrison. For us, we would be in garrison for like a month or two at a time. And then we would take buses over to Eastern Germany to do a month of field training with the miles gear and bang bangs and stuff in the woods. And then we would go like an hour up the road and do another month in Grafenwehr to do all our table fires. So shoot all the way down from M4 all the way up to Bradleys and tanks. And then we would work our way up to like a combined live fire with mortars, artilleries, Bradleys, and all that. And I'll say that's one thing Grafenwehr is really cool about. Like the whole area is called JMRC, Joint Multi Readiness Center, I think. So we have all these NATO countries coming in and out of there, and they have a really cool range complex. So you could do 360 shoot houses out there where you can just light houses up on the inside. We could do these really cool tables where we've got artillery and A-10s firing over us while the Bradleys are rolling down the road, stinging up stuff, and then they pull into a village and drop ramp, and we go in and do our thing. And so that was pretty fun. We did some pretty cool training there, and I think we did Hohenfels was the field training, and then we did Graf, and we did 2 cycles of those dispersed over months. And then standard Germany garrison infantry stuff, painting stuff, picking up trash, boring stuff. Why am I in the friggin' army stuff? And then it's 2000 November 2005, I think, is when we deployed to Kuwait with no mission, had no idea what we were doing, and then we sat in Kuwait for about couple months until we went to Ramadi. So we got stuck at Camp Buring in Kuwait. A lot of people know that base, and it's just we started off in the giant tents with like 200 dudes in there, and after a couple weeks, we're like, "What are we doing, man? Are we going to go back to Germany?" Like we had no mission, and then they said, "All right, we're going to move you guys to these hard structure buildings," and that's when we're all like, "Okay, that's a bad sign because." They're gonna make us like permanent party here in Kuwait. We're like, we no way, man, because we're not in a combat zone. We're just doing training, which was not the best training, but we also are not, we can't drink or go out and do anything. It's like that's about the worst thing you could do to grunts is lock them up. And it's like, all right, are we going to war or not? Because either way, if not, we should go back home to where there's beer. So yeah, we sat in Kuwait for a while doing training, ranges, all this crap, and then finally, I bet you guys do shorter deployments. At least you were at the time. So I bet we were just waiting on the Marines to show up so we could see what you guys were doing because it was mostly Marines that were in our area of Ramadi. So I think it was like June. Finally, they're like, "Yep, we're going to Ramadi. It's the worst place in all our entire theaters right now. So have fun." And they're like, some of the platoon leaders are like, "Yeah, we're expecting 80% casualties," and we're all just like, "Whoa, we're all gonna die," you know. Yeah, so did that, and Ramadi was pretty cool. Yeah, those gangsters. But I mentioned it in the last talk. It was really cool working with the Marines. That was really fun. All the stereotypes I heard and hanging out with them in Kuwait, getting to shoot the shit with them. It was an experience. I didn't see any of those silly stereotypes. As a matter of fact, a funny story. We were staying in the chow hall in Kuwait, and one of my Joes was ragging. Like we had all the coolest, newest equipment in 2005. Like I had a laser night sight with a floodlight, an IR floodlight on my 203. And that was all new at the time. And so the Army thought we were like the baddest. And well, that's the PSQ 18 Alpha, and that's already like grandpa stuff. So we're standing in line at the chow hall, and the Marines still had M16A2s with Pac 4s like duct taped to the freaking handguards. And I'd already been paying attention to what they were doing and how they were training. And so I knew they probably had an edge on us. Plus, just talking to some of them and seeing how they dealt with their NCOs, I'm like, these guys don't mess around, man. So anyway, one of my privates was running his mouth about, he's like, "Well, you got your stuff taped on your gun. What is that going to do?" And so the before the Marine was about to kick my guy's ass, I wanted to have fun with it. So, because that we had like some cool rivalry. It was hilarious. Like their Joes didn't want to respect us. I didn't have a problem with them because I didn't try to pull rank on any of them because I didn't need to. They had the military courtesy down. They'd be like, they'd call me sergeant. If I tried to do anything silly, they probably would have messed me up like some of my idiot sergeants that tried to mess with them. But I was always cool with them and never messed with them. But anyway, this guy was talking shit, and I was like, I called my own dude out. I was like, "Hey, what's the max effective range on your weapon there? Point and area target." And it was one of my Joes, so of course he froze up. So proving that I didn't do my job enough. And then I pointed to the Marines M16A2. I was like, "Hey, private, same question." And he just like, without friggin' hesitating, Sergeant, blah, blah. I think for the A2, it was like 600 meters point target, 800 meters area target. I think
550.
550 for the M16.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, so he just spouted it off, and I looked back at my Joe. I'm like, "You want to keep talking now, or you want to go study some shit?" So it was fun, man. Anyway, that deployment was pretty cool. It was like the Marines were destroying stuff in the city. We were destroying stuff in the city. It was like just balls to the wall. Like Baghdad was pretty boring. We had a huge car bomb that destroyed the checkpoint, but other than that, it was like getting mortared every now and then and rocketed. And we're like, "What are we doing here?" And then Ramadi was like, serious freaking insurgency, like, real stuff going on.
Is this that bombing? you're talking about?
No, that's actually from Ramadi. That's some fire we started after a firefight. You know, I guess I could have sent you pictures of that, but um
Well, I'm just I'm just
I'll
gonna
just
keep putting up pictures from your deployment, man. Just you can just walk us through your time in Ramadi and some of the glorious things you guys did there.
yeah, that was actually what was funny was we were sitting in Kuwait doing nothing, and so around we were still sending guys home on leave as if we were deployed. So I went home on leave. I came back to Germany and got to hang out with my girlfriend, wife now. And so we were screwing around in Germany, and then we had done all these rehearsals to convoy somewhere in Iraq, pick up ammo and all that. And I went back to Germany on leave, and then I got an email from one of my buddies saying, "Hey, it's on. We're going to Iraq." And I was like, "Fuck, man." So I was sitting in Germany when my unit actually went up north to Ramadi, and they convoyed up there. So again, you know, I missed a push into Iraq. And then, you know, this was 2005, so we didn't have all the social media and all that. So it was pretty much like a couple days would go by, and I would check my email to see what was going on. And when I started getting emails from my buddies, I knew pretty quickly it was a different deployment because they were like, "Yeah, you know, so and so's truck got blown up. They got, you know, they're all hurt, and the truck is destroyed." And I'm thinking about some of the IEDs we found and dealt with in Baghdad. And I'm like, what? Like, what are they doing out there now? Because, you know, in Baghdad, we still had soft shells and sometimes no armor at all, just like a pickup truck. And yeah, so then I did my 2 weeks leave in Germany and flew through Kuwait, BIOP, and all that again, and finally got out to Ramadi by Chinook, or no, the yeah Chinook, and then yeah, and then it was on. You know, my squad leader, I had changed squads, and my squad leader was like, he's like, "Dude, this isn't like y'all's last deployment at all." He had just come from the 101st, and I'm like, "All right, cool, I'm ready." He's like, "No, man, it's really bad here." I'm like, "All right," so and it was no shit. Like the next day, he's like, "Yep, we're going on this patrol tomorrow. This is what we're doing, and this is what our squad's job is." So gave me the whole rundown. So, you know, I'm on edge. It's my first time back in theater in about a year. So I'm already pretty on edge. But the next day, we got into my first firefight of that deployment. It was like one of my soldiers got he got shot. I think 3 rounds hit him. One of them hit him in his arm. The other ones hit him in his vest. And he was not far from me. We're standing on a road looking at a house, looking for stuff, kind of off from our unit. And he gets lit up not too far from me. And I was, you know, we all reacted pretty good. We got him out of the street and started treating him and returning fire and all that. But I remember just laying behind this berm, you know, with like 2 guys had bounded up to come up to us to help suppress and help treat the guy. Um, and so I remember looking back and realizing our platoon was about 300 meters behind us. And I'm like, man, I just got shot at by like legit dude trying to kill us. And it hit my buddy next to me. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is real out here. Because you know, I was thinking, oh yeah, we might get blown up and walk away or not, or we'll get some more mortars or whatever. But actually having, you know, a machine gun fire at you, that's when you're just like, okay, yeah, like it's real. And so, you know, baptism by fire. That's when, you know, so I was the team leader, Sergeant E5, and I think I was pretty good, but I definitely any cockiness I had from the first deployment, I was like, okay, none of that shit counts because we didn't deal with anything like this. So I think a lot of the other leaders in my platoon were smart enough to do that. We were all pretty worried, you know, but we tried not to like freak our guys out because, you know, we were the only guys with, you know, combat experience. We got our combat infantryman's badge. I always say some of us earned it in Baghdad because of the car bomb and mortars. But I say I got it from Baghdad, but I earned it in Ramadi because that's when it was really like, yeah, that's actually me in the back of that firing line. That's for my squad leader. My first squad leader I had, we lost him over there. And because I knew him so well, I was in charge of the the firing squad, and so those are my 7 dudes. Well, 22-year-old buck sergeant. I have a awesome story about that. People write me sometimes that were higher than me. They're like, "What's your deal with sergeant majors and all these guys?" And I have a lot of them, but one of them was that memorial. So, like in Ramadi, there was a memorial going on every day somewhere. It was like you'd go to a memorial, say bye to somebody, and then you just go out and do your mission, and that's it. You just move on. So, kind of one of the reasons we have issues. We never get to deal with the stuff out there. We just keep moving. So, uh, we were doing our missions and rehearsing for this memorial. We did the memorial, and then part of the ceremony was for me to left face the guys, and the firing party. They're the first ones to come up to the boots and the boots, helmet, and weapon, and salute and say bye. That's how the ceremony went for us, and we had rehearsed it. So we fired the 21 shots and then went to do the left face, forward march. And then this master sergeant, like we called him the Blue Diamond Police because he was an E8 master sergeant, did absolutely nothing but just walk around and police people's uniforms and all the silliness that most of us hate about the FOBIT military. And this was in Ramadi. So all the stuff we're dealing with outside the wire and getting mortared on our base. And then we got guys like this. So we all had a problem with this dude, and he hated me because that's when I started getting into trouble. I was one of those E5s that I took my oath seriously. And if somebody was messing with my dudes, especially with their chow time, I would tactfully tell them to fuck off, you know. So he was that guy, that always messed with my guys. And, I don't know if he was waiting on us to screw up or what, or if he just happened to be standing there, but he actually stopped our formation in the middle of the ceremony and was like, was like, "Hey, Sergeant, you guys need to police up your brass from the blanks that we fired." And I'm like, "Mass Sergeant, we're in the middle of a ceremony. They need to go salute their freaking dead squad leader, his memorial, and we will come back." And he could not accept that. So, we went back and forth a little bit. Meanwhile, there's like 200-300 guys over there waiting on this freaking firing squad to come through. They're all standing at attention waiting on us. And like I look like nobody saw this, and my blood's boiling. This was my old squad leader, like one of my heroes, and he was one of our best NCOs in our platoon ever. He was like the infantry godfather. We're trying to say bye to him, and this guy's doing this, and I don't know how I didn't freak out. None of my guys attacked him, I don't know how I didn't, but somehow we just stayed cool. And so we picked up the brass, went and did our thing, and came back. And you know, I I was kicking myself for not like just destroying this dude, but looking back, it's like, okay, well, that wouldn't have brought my squad leader back, and it probably would have hurt my career even more than I did later. So it was a good call. But I did get my revenge. I went to we had an awesome company commander. Like in my first deployment, our first sergeant was amazing, like stud freaking NCO, the guy that you want in charge of troops. My second deployment, our first sergeant was completely useless, coward, just bad first sergeant, bad NCO overall. But our company commander was, go figure, a former enlisted guy from a ranger battalion. So those usually, in my experience, have been the best officers, your prior enlisted dudes. So anyway, he was awesome, and he had been out with us a lot. He loved our platoon because he would always joke like, "Third platoon, you're the only guys that go out on a basic recon mission and come back black on ammo with carbon stains all over your face," because he had seen us. He was there for our first firefight, and he had seen us in action a lot, and he liked us. So anyway, after the ceremony, I just couldn't hold it together. So I saw him standing over there, and I saw the master sergeant, and I went over there like a kid and tattletaled. I'm like, "Sir, this fucking piece of shit," and it was kind of cool because he was like, "What?" And he knew the squad leader that we had lost, and he knew all of our connection to him. So he actually grabbed the dude brought him over there and kind of lit him up in front of everybody and actually made him apologize. That was kind of cool. So, you know, a master sergeant being forced to apologize to an E5 sergeant and a couple privates and specialists, like
it would have been awesome. It would have been awesome if your company commander made you guys take that brass out of your pockets, drop it on the ground, and then make him fucking pick it up.
Yeah. You know, that whole, like, we lost a lot of good dudes out there in Ramadi, but something like that just sucks, you know? So whenever people are like, the rest of my career, they're like, man, you really hate, you really hate E8s and above. And I'm like, yes, you know, it's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, there's plenty of good higher ranking dudes, you know, but just dealing with that for the worst deployment possible, it was bad. And I think, you know, and you guys struggled with it too. Like the Marines we had on that base, like I think they had more of an attitude than some of us as far as these higher up guys, because the Marines were mostly like, we had one of our battalions was in the city with the Marines. We were on Blue Diamond north of the city on the other side of the river. So we would go into the city to support them and do joint operations, but our main priority was the farmlands north. So totally different. Like the city, you know, the farmland was bad in its aspect, but the city was just, you know, we would sit at our little buildings and just watch the river at night, and we would just watch it's like freaking apocalypse every night. That was like our entertainment. And it was mostly the Marines there. So we could tell the guys that would come use our internet cafe if they were staying at some of the combat outposts in the city, you know, because that's when all that started to get big. And you could tell, you know, they had an attitude like us, but you could tell who had been through worse stuff, because when some army guy with a clean uniform would correct somebody's uniform, like, you know, it started to get pretty bad, you know, with the discipline. So yeah, it was a shit show. You know, we're losing guys. It's a terrible deployment. I was sniper qualified, so I would run like hide site teams, not pairs of snipers, but an entire team. And we'd be laying on concrete roofs in the dead of summer, or laying out in the woods, just bumming in the summer for days, you know. And we'd get picked up and come in, and this master sergeant or guys like him, they're kicking us out of the chow hall because we haven't shaved or our uniforms are dirty. And we're, you know, it's stuff like that. We're like, dude, we are in Ramadi. Like, it's bad here. Like, you see, they had a graveyard of blown up trucks on Blue Diamond. So, you know, and it was full. Blown up trucks with body parts still on them and everything. And it just smelled like death in that whole area. And we got these guys there, and we're just like, why does the army put these people out here? Like, there should be. So when we were at our combat outpost with a platoon, it was awesome. So like when you see these videos, especially in Afghanistan, of people in boxer shorts and flip flops firing machine guns, you know, it's because there's no brass around. Yeah, you know, I pulled that a couple times. I'd be awakened at a combat outpost, and I'd come out there in my flip flops and stuff, and somebody would square me away. Like once there was a lull and you didn't need every gun, somebody, hey, go put your shit on, you know, like, all right, thanks, you know. It's like, but yeah, on Camp Ramadi was worse, but we only went down there every now and then, because if you went there, you had to, like, I think at the chow hall, when you were standing in line at the chow hall at Camp Ramadi, you had to fill sandbags before you went in. And all the grunts, Marine and Army, we all hated it because we're like, these are for us. Like, we're out there doing the job. Like, you freaking pogues do this job. Like, you pull your weight and fill up sandbags, but everybody had to do it. So we were like, all right, we're not going to Camp Ramadi anymore. They make grunts work. That sucks.
I got a Fobbit story for you. This is my second deployment in 2004. And after we got done fighting in the Battle of Najaf, we moved up to Abu Ghraib prison to relieve a rifle company from 3rd Battalion, 1st Marines, so they could go take part in the second offensive of Fallujah. So while we were there, we had to escort a convoy to the Green Zone, which is, you know, I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's like big fucking built up. Like they had a Walmart-sized PX there. And like right next to that was this big thing we called the Haji Bazaar. It was like massive locals came in and set up like a swap meet thing. So I had never been there before. None of us had ever been there before, but we had to escort some. I think it was some 7 tons to that place. So we get there, we see this big Walmart size PX, we see this Haji Bazaar, and we stage our gun trucks, and we're about to go inside. Well, I mean, we didn't have any like soft covers on us. Like we didn't know there was a Walmart size PX on this, huge giant freaking green zone base. But we're gonna go into this PX because it's awesome. Like let's check it out. So we stage gun trucks. We start walking in, and I don't have a cover on because, like I said, I mean we wear body armor. We're on a freaking convoy. What the hell you need a soft cover for? This staff sergeant who was wearing just pristine camis. I mean, these things were super clean. He had an 8-point cover on. Now, you don't wear 8-point covers in theater, right? Like everybody's got a boonie on when you are wearing your soft cover back on like a fob and stuff. This guy had an 8-point cover and a shoulder holster. A leather, one of those leather shoulder holsters for his M9. Like if there were any telltale signs of a freaking pogue, it's an 8-point cover and a shoulder holster with clean camis, right? So he sees me. He's like, "You come here." So I go over there and I'm like, "Yes, Staff Sergeant." He's like, "Where the fuck is your cover?" And I was like, "Well, we just came in from a convoy." I was like, "We were escorting a convoy over here from Abu Ghraib prison. We just saw this PX. We're going to run in there." He's like, "You're the reason that gives us a bad name," or something. He's chewing my ass over this. And I'm just thinking,
the Marine guy.
Yeah. I was like, we had just got done hooking and jabbing with the Mahdi army and then the Joff cemetery, just slaying enemy bodies, right? We just got moved up to Abu Ghraib prison, and we were hooking and jabbing up there at Abu Ghraib prison. And this guy's saying that I and my fellow Marines that were on this convoy were making the Marine Corps look bad. And I'm like thinking to myself, you got to be fucking kidding me. So I said, well, all I have, Staff Sergeant's a Kevlar. He's like, well, go put your fucking Kevlar on. So we started walking back to the gun trucks. Well, our XO was there, and our XO sees us coming back. He's like, what are you guys doing? Why are you coming back? He goes, we told him, he goes, fuck that guy. He's like, if you see that guy again, just tell him to come see me. So we just turned around and walked back to the PX.
Yeah, that's what year was that?
That was 04.
Okay, yeah. The green zone was always hooked up, but it was still pretty shabby. Like they still just had one, like a single wide trailer for that PX, but that was already awesome at the time. And then I had heard stories later on. They were like, "Oh man, the PX," like because it was still pretty crappy for us. I mean, we're way out there at the gate, so we didn't have buses and crap. We couldn't drive our vehicles down there, so to go to the PX was like, half a day's walk to go carry your own shit back and clothes and all that. It was all the wrong size. But I heard later on what it turned into, and I'm like, man, I'm glad we left that place.
Well, this would have been like late 04 because Battle in the Joff was in August. So this would have been like October, maybe time frame.
Yeah. I see. And that's what was weird about that theater is everything changed all the time. So Baghdad was pretty boring and chill when we were there. And then Second Cav from the army took over where we were. And a couple months later, not blaming them, but we would see like Haifa Street is ambush alley.
Yeah.
And we're like, what? Like we walk around there in regular clothes. Like what's going on? And then we had one of my team leaders. He was I think it was our Hawaiian infantry unit. They were up there with you guys in the Joff. And he had some stories, and then later on in my CA world, I was talking to a guy who was in Ramadi for a rotation before mine. And he was like, dude, we were CA, we were rolling around the city in Ramadi. It was no problem. And I was like, well, when I was there, it was a problem. Like it was bad because it was like, all right, well, it's not about if something's going to happen. It was like every day, what's going to happen and when. Right. Like it was every day, but I don't know. So I know you guys have that problem too, and you guys definitely have like if there's one branch that has discipline no matter what, it's you guys. And that's what you want in a war zone. So like all the heroic stories we hear about, it's guys like like that with just discipline and like dedication to duty. What's strange is when we get into this weird fob warfare that we have that nobody's used to. And like you said, you got guys with clean uniforms. They have no idea what's going on out there, and they're on these forward deployed bases. And that's kind of when I would see the discipline. It's like, okay, I got it. Basic military discipline. Like, yeah, like we'd be in hide sites for days. We'd come back and we would clean up, and be soldiers. We'd clean our weapons first and then go eat. And then we'd take showers and all that stuff. And then the robotic army discipline, it's like, okay, we have to relax it a little bit. Our guys will start fragging people, and yeah, you guys, I mean, it was awesome to watch Marines just yell at Army high ranking dudes. They're like, fuck you, I don't care. It was just awesome to see that because like we stirred up some stuff. We had a combo Marine unit near us. And it was funny because they'd be like, yeah, we're all Marines. And we'd be like, not you guys. Like, you don't go out, so you don't count. And so we definitely had some issues with them, but it was fun. Like one of our guys decided to steal their guidon. And it's like, I don't know why you would steal a Marine's guidon. So we had a nice building. And it was like we built 2 stories in there in this little concrete building. So like one day we're off and I'm standing there in my flip flops and one of the guy comes in hot and sweaty, breathing heavy, and just I see a guidon getting chucked up by me up on the upper deck, and I'm like, okay, what's going on? And right behind him is this freaking E6 from the Marines, the same guy that had yelled at us for all kinds of silliness, and he just like later on we asked him, we're like, why did you do that, man? He's like, I don't know, it was sitting there. Like so. But he stole this guidon, and it was the funniest shit because this is when you could see the difference between the Army and the Marines. Like, they, like I said, they were combo guys. So he was like being a hardcore like dude, but he's just like, where is it? And my guy, we joke about this in the Army. Like if you're ever presented with a situation like this, you answer every question with another question. And so he did it perfectly. The guy's like, where is it? And he's like, where's what, Sergeant? I saw you take it. I don't know what you're talking about, Sergeant. And so he just kept doing that over and over. And then some of my guys were awakened by this, and we're like, what is going on? And we had a pro wrestler in our squad. We had some boxers, we had some hardcore dudes, and it came down to like, this is one staff sergeant, like he outranks us all, but we could also still beat his ass. And we're also combat hardened dudes that will risk losing our rank. And so eventually he started to back off, and like one of my buddies called him a pogue. he's like, and the guy kind of broke it. He's like, I have seen some shit. You don't think I've seen some shit? And kind of broke him. We're just like, oh, okay, all right. So I threw the guy down, like, take your flag, dude. Like it was, I don't know. I know people watching this will think that's just like terrible, but it's like, come on, man, you're in a war zone. You got it. Like, I don't know what was going through that guy's mind. He's probably like, yeah, we're going to fuck with the Marines. But it's like, after a while, like we got this dude yelling at us. We're like, all right, you're in our barracks, man. Like, I'll give you your flag back, but go away,
You guys are lucky you didn't take an infantry rifle company's flag guidon. They were,
yeah,
exactly. You're gonna have the whole platoon over there ready to scrap.
Oh yeah, we've had I've seen Army freaking officers try to stir up shit with some of the grunts that were out there with us on the Marine side, and they would surround them. They're like, we don't see your rank. You're an officer, but we don't see that right now. It was, and I'm sorry to say, sometimes that's needed. I don't think we need to be out there fragging people like Vietnam days, but sometimes it's kind of like the cushy Western softness has made its way into our military, and these people get rank somehow. And it's like there needs to be like for a while between deployments, we did a really cool thing where there was no rank and we would grapple. And so it was training to grapple, but it was also an unofficial call out session. So if guys in a platoon had a beef, they would go at it. And it was like once a month, you knew you could call a dude out and his rank didn't matter or your rank didn't matter. You couldn't hide behind it. And so that was kind of, I looked back on that, was like, that's a pretty cool quality control thing that could be a way to mitigate some of that animosity, but then later on, we went full stereotype mechanized infantry, and they were like, all right, if you're going to do grappling, you got to have a risk assessment and 2 medics, and you got to have a first sergeant out there. And we're like, all right, well, we ain't freaking grappling anymore, if you're going to make it this hard. So yeah,
it's so ridiculous.
safety trumps everything these days. And guys get into combat, and the first machine gun goes off next to their head, and they're like, what do I do?
Yeah, it's that's an unfortunate thing, man. Because I remember back in the day, it was. I mean, I haven't been around an active duty infantry rifle company in a long time, but I mean, when I was on active duty, that's all we did was fight each other. It was, we fight internally, right, in our platoon. I was a part of weapons platoon because I was a machine gunner. So we fought each other within the section. Then we fought other sections. So we were beating on the mortarmen, we were beating on the assaultmen. And then if somebody from another platoon jacked with somebody from weapons platoon, well, then we'd go fight the whole platoon, whatever platoon that was. And then I remember there was this one time where it was field day. Every Thursday was field day. And we literally had weapons platoon in whole in front of the barracks. And then there was one of the rifle platoons in whole in front of the barracks. And in the middle were like 2 representatives of each platoon. And it looked like a scene out of Braveheart because they're like negotiating terms, right? And then like terms broke down. And then it was 2 armies clashing into each other, it was just bodies getting thrown everywhere. It was just awesome. Just great old times, good old days.
That's another one of those movies, Heartbreak Ridge, with
yes, exactly.
With the showdown, they're all shirtless and fighting each other in the mud pit. And yeah, after a while, I'm like, when do we get to do that stuff? It's gone.
We still kind of do that. So I'm in the reserve still. And I've been fortunate to be able to stay in the infantry community. But we still will go and we'll do like bull in the ring and grappling and stuff like that. But yeah, unfortunately, there is a lot of safety tape if the wrong people are around. And the second somebody gets hurt, those are going to be the first questions asked. Well, did you have a corpsman? Did you have a freaking? You know what I'm saying? So it all comes with some risk.
Yeah, it's all fun and games till somebody gets hurt. When we came back from Ramadi, it was really bad because that was a bad deployment. And as an NCO, we did the MPs in Baumholder, Germany were like reservists deployed to Germany. So that didn't help because they were way under strength for what they were dealing with. And whenever they, we didn't, it's like, okay, you respect MPs, but when you find out they're reservists and that's their deployment to Germany and you just came back from freaking Ramadi, it's like, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but it happens, like guys are like, dude, I don't care what your authority is, and the more alcohol they consume, the worse it gets. So, our unit had this awesome idea to make the courtesy patrol. So if you were an NCO, you had your regular staff duty on the weekends, like once a month, you'd be sitting at the desk for 24 hours, keeping the barracks under control. And so as an E5, I got pegged for that all the time. And then also you would get pegged for courtesy patrol. We just called it CP. So you would have to go out with other CPs like NCOs in the town to help the MPs control all the, it was like Gremlins, like that scene from Gremlins. Guys get let off and they just all storm downtown. It's like Normandy happening with Gremlins. And like, even us, we're in uniform and we have our rank on and everything, but we couldn't carry anything, not a baton or anything. And then we got this stupid scabbard on that says CP. And so you're basically like a target. So there was like 4 major bars in this tiny little town. They were all packed and we would walk in there to make our presence known. And it was like half the guys knew us. They were in our company or whatever. We would chat for a little bit. Hey, how's it going? And then beer bottles would start hitting the walls behind us. And we're like, all right, we got to go. Cause it's like, there'd be like 2 of us, 2 freaking sergeants that don't want to be there in like a bar of just angry dudes that have done nothing but like lost their buddies and go to war. So they got out of control, like New Year's was interesting. Guys that somehow had parachute flares left over from deployment, shooting them at the barracks across the street. And as CQ, we would, CQ, I had the funniest stories because I'm just sitting there at the desk. We're trying to stay awake. And up the road, we had this huge parade square. for our battalion and our brigade. And like on one side, we had our battalion CQ, the staff duty. And on the other side, we had the brigade staff duty. So we had like 3 freaking command levels. And everybody had a CQ or a staff duty out there. And so we would hear stuff going on in the barracks and we would try to keep it in-house, without the MPs getting involved. And sometimes that meant me getting my ass kicked by my own buddies because they were drunk and stupid, but I didn't want to get them arrested. So we'd go in there and handle it and put a lock on it. But then once it escalated outside the barracks into the streets or into that parade square, it was pretty much like, dude, shut up. Brigade staff duty is going to hear you, or battalion staff duty is going to hear you, and those are E6s and above, and they're above the company, so they don't want any of our bullshit. So they will call the police and all that. It's like it would get out of hand. Guys throwing beer bottles at each other for fun. It's like as kids, we had rock fights, and we have barracks buildings next to each other, 3 stories, and guys just throwing beer bottles at each other across the balconies. And you're just sitting there at 2 a.m. and you hear beer bottles breaking. It's like, what now? Like, what? How can we ruin my night tonight? It's like you're standing down there looking at them like, guys, really? We're actually throwing beer bottles at each other, really? Like,
just wild stuff in the grunts. I remember being on it was after we got out, and it was a couple hours after final formation and whatnot. And I was walking to my car from the barracks, and I passed one room, and there was a guy with a 55-gallon drum with a bonfire in it in his barracks room. And he's like sitting there with a beer. It was just like I had to pull a Sergeant Schultz, man, from Hogan's Heroes. I see nothing. That's just kind of the stupid shit that guys that drunk Marines would do. And that's the reason why our barracks walls are made out of cinder blocks.
Yeah. Yeah, we had brand new barracks, so everything was nice and beautiful, and it just got ruined. I mean, yeah, if we would have had like sheetrock or something, it would have been bad. Guys would have to be like, yeah, I wanted to get to my buddy's room, so we put a hole through there. We don't need that plumbing. Fuck all that. Like, we got joined rooms, but I'd be sitting on CQ, and I usually had 2 privates with me or 2 lower enlisted guys, and for some reason, I always got stuck with people outside of my platoon. It was weird, and they were all new guys that hadn't deployed. So I'm sitting there, hardened combat badass, and I don't want to deal with any shit at night. And they're like brand new Joes. So I have to toe that line between being a good garrison sergeant, caring about standards and all that, but also thinking like, all right, well, I know what that guy has been through. So if he wants to knock that guy out tonight, I'm fine with it, just as long as he doesn't have to go to the hospital. But then if those guys are there, I got to be a sergeant tonight, damn it, and it's like, sometimes it was scary. We had the master key. We had these electronic keys that just was like a hotel and would open the door. So we'd hear a ruckus going on, and I'd have these 2 privates, and they're just like terrified. And I'm like, all right, I know this guy. He is fucking crazy. So I don't think he has gun or weapon, but if he comes at me, like, you guys have to take him down and help me out. And they're just like, Roger that, Sergeant. I'm like, don't fucking be a bitch, and like open the door, and there's my old Virginia freaking redneck buddy that's like 6'4", wants to kill everybody. Jim Bean all night and Johnny Cash music playing, and I'm just like, here we go. It's like Thunderdome, and my freaking runners are standing out the door on their cell phones. I'm like, you better be texting staff duty, dude. Yeah, it was good times, man. I definitely miss the shenanigans you see in the infantry world. It's like,
yeah, 100%.
I mean, I had no idea you guys had infantry in the reserves. That's cool as hell. So
yeah, we got a bunch of infantry battalions.
We only have that in the guard. So I have a lot of buddies that got out and went to the guard, but me staying overseas, we just had the reserves, and I was just like, ugh. Like, we have a lot of prior service infantry guys like me, so that was always pretty cool. But having an actual infantry unit, yeah, the stuff you see, it's just, it's unbelievable.
Well, so let's get back on track here. I think we went down a rabbit hole talking about grunt life, but so wrapping up your Ramadi deployment, and I assume you go back to Germany again.
Yeah. Let's see. I think we spent a summer there. I think it was like November 2006 we came back. So if you look up the Battle of Ramadi, that's like the most famous thing. Like I said before, the like Jocko, they talk about that all the time because that was that time period. So it's pretty cool. Like when I go to that Wikipedia and I see my unit on there and all the guys we knew. Um, so again, I did not serve with freaking Jocko Willing. It's just a time reference. It's something I can tell people so they're like, "Oh yeah, that Ramadi. Okay, yeah, got it." Um, but I was with we fell under task force armor 135 armor, so tankers, and I think our task force had almost 200 people in it, and we lost like 23. So we had the Marines definitely got their asses kicked more than we did. Nothing on them; they just got hit really hard. But we definitely had our losses, and I think everybody in my platoon got blown up by an IED at least once, and then most of us had gotten hit multiple times. And it was pretty much with those EFPs. You either walked away with a headache and you were okay, and we all got diagnosed with TBI later, or you didn't walk away at all. So it was really just, um, you know, yeah, like I guess luck. I it's all we can say. Um, yeah, so we came back around November.
Real quick,
Uh,
Randall, you just explain what a EFP is because I don't think a lot of these guys know that are watching.
yeah, I've heard many definitions, but we knew it as explosively formed projectile. So if you picture the basics of an RPG or an AT4, in Ramadi, they would use these copper cylinders and it would just be a small blast, like not C4, but something like C4 just to propel this copper plate or cylinder. And that would be so hot and molten, it would just pierce anything. So, not the huge boom that just surrounds the whole convoy and dust and everything, but just a real quick, not even that loud boom, but it uses your armor against you. So it would hit. We had up armored Humvees at the time, and then we had Bradleys, and it would go through all of that. So as it would hit armor, it would just gain momentum and just take that armor with it. So you know, um, you know, I see. I didn't know if you wanted pictures like that or not, but I could have sent you a whole bunch of pictures of blown up vehicles and stuff, like what it actually does
Yeah,
to these vehicles. Because like the bottom of a Bradley, the hull, you have about that much of armor, and then you have a dead space, what we call the hull. Like I said last time, where all my POL was leaking into, and then you have another very thick section. So like when this stuff would hit the bottom of that, it would just blow it all up. And so dismounts in the back, they would just get shattered with this stuff, or it would blow out their eardrums and just blow out above them. And they were just like, what happened? But the floors like opened up like hell. So yeah, just deadly stuff, like these really big bombs, like 200-pound bombs, 2,000-pound bombs they'd use in Afghanistan with like propane tanks and, like 155 shells. Those are all pretty scary, but they weren't as penetrating as these were. Like these, like nothing we had could stop these. And that's what was really kind of terrifying about it.
I
So that,
remember them. I remember them briefing us about them. We never got hit by one, but I remember getting a brief about them in '04, and they were telling us like these things will just slice right through our Abrams tanks. Like they're so nasty.
yeah. And they would do command detonation, they would do wireless detonation, they would do a combination of both. And what was really freaky about Ramadi was like the TTPs, like how people did everything, it changed almost weekly. So we would get lit up and we would adjust and do something different, and then they would be watching us and they would adjust. So it was like almost weekly. In the city, it was just an onslaught. But out in the farmlands, we can actually kind of see the adjustments that they would make versus what we would do. So, it was just a guessing game all the time. It's like, all right, well, they're doing this now. We're going to go to that. And toward the end, it got to where if we were in vehicles, there was one road, I think we called it Route Pacer. That was where my squad leader died. We lost a lot of guys. It was so bad. we would get to a point where truck commanders or team leaders, we would get out and get on the side of the road, like way off the sides, and we would walk in front of the trucks, and we would look for the like a shimmer of copper wire coming down, because by then they were using combinations of remote detonated, and it would be to like some kind of control device, and then it would be copper wired into the actual blast area. And they would bury like triple stacked 155s, everything. So our thinking was all like they were like repaving roads, like patches of roads would have bombs in them. So our thinking was, okay, all the work they're putting into it, they probably aren't going to waste it on one guy on the side of the road. And if they do, we would be pretty far off enough, Grunt thinking, oh, I might lose my ear or whatever, it's like totally unsafe, but we would justify it to keep moving. And that usually worked out. Like nothing went off for us when I was out there that way. And we would find copper wire left and right, we would just cut it, pull on it, see if we could pull something. If not, we would cut it, get the guys on sights, or we'd get on glass and try to follow the wire down to see if we saw anything. If not, we would just keep moving. And then they would adjust to that, as an example, by actually using marksmen against us. So we didn't really deal with sniper teams or marksmen too much. When I did my hide sites, we would kind of deal with some counter ambush guys. I mean, they couldn't really compare to us, but on the ground like that, we would be focused on looking at a shine of copper wire or a trigger man on a rooftop or something. So we're kind of busy looking. And then all of a sudden we would have like pretty controlled shots coming at us from a definite high powered rifle, like a Dragunov or something. And so we're just like, shit, okay, well, we can't get out of the vehicles and walk anymore, so it was really like every week was freaking some kind of adaptation from them. And it was crazy because it was, when by the time I went to Afghanistan later, I had nothing but respect for these guys, because it's like, all politics aside, whether you think you're right or wrong, like we faced some serious dudes. And so we thought we were doing the right thing. They were fighting for what they thought was right. And it was, it was a serious battle. So, later on, I started reading about the American Revolution. I'm like, I fought these guys. I know these types of people.
All right. So post second deployment, what happens to you said you were sergeant at the time?
Yeah. So yeah, we had all the shenanigans. We redeployed to Germany, and I had 4 months to figure out if I wanted to stay in or figure out what I was going to do after the army. So that was kind of a good test of the army's transition system, which is terrible. So in those 4 months, like, my leadership's trying to send me to leadership schools to continue my career, and I'm like, screw you guys, I'm not doing it. And I had well, my girlfriend at the time, we're married now. I was looking at, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. But I wanted to stay in Germany. So I was trying to figure all that out. And then, dealing with being a garrison in a freaking infantry unit and all that. And then somehow there was like 2 ways you could stay in Europe at the time. You could do like a European out, and I don't even remember what that is anymore, but that was what my unit was trying to push on me. And then I talked to a buddy, and he was like, just go get a NAF job, work for AFES or MWR at first and figure it out then, because then you get like a SOFA status. That's like your status of forces agreement, and you can legally stay here without having to have residency. So you're basically like a army dude over here, kind of on the army's dime. It's like, okay, the army employs me here. That's why I'm here. So you don't have to pay German taxes and all that. You get a mailbox, rations card. So in those 4 months, I went and found a job, the lowest of the low. I think, yeah, I started at like a car repair shop, the MWR, like where you go fix your own vehicles. I started working there, and I did like oil changes and operated the car wash sometimes. So That was awesome. And then I also went straight into the reserves because you could I could have gotten out, but I still had the 8-year obligation. I had 4 years left. And the reserve recruiter, he's like, dude, if you just separate now, you're going to get recalled. And this was 2007. So pretty likely I would have been recalled as a ex grunt to go deploy again with some random unit. So I re-enlisted into the reserves, and we weren't civil affairs at the time, but about 3 years later we became civil affairs, and so that's pretty much how I finished out my army service. And I don't know. There's a lot of stories there, but I don't think anything as exciting as my grunt days. The only thing is civil affairs was really fun in Europe. Like reserve civil affairs in the army. Like you guys have just CIMIC, right? You guys don't have CA in the
Um,
Marines.
we have civil affairs.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Shows what I
remember. I
know.
remember them handing out money left and right in Iraq and stuff, paying people off.
Yeah. Money and soccer balls.
Yeah.
That's the stereotype. Hearts and minds. But that's like one of the things you can do, but I didn't do any of the hearts and minds CA. I did like some of the pretty fun stuff. So we were the first forward deployed civil affairs battalion in the army. And so our theater was Africa, supporting AFRICOM, or Eastern Europe. And so that was pretty cool because I had guys in my reserve unit that were older, and they were with the Berlin Brigade. So they were stationed around Checkpoint Charlie and all that in the 80s and dealt with all that stuff. And then now, you know, 2010 and beyond, they're in our civil affairs unit, and we're kind of going back to the whole West versus East stuff, and using the Baltics and Eastern Europe as kind of like proxies. And it was a totally different thing because, you know, you'd go to like Eastern Poland and Bulgaria and all that, and they're all like 100% friggin' America. They're like, yep, we like McDonald's and NASCAR. It's all great. You know, we don't want, we don't want the communist stuff. So very different, but it was cool to hear like their stories. They're like, yeah, you know, I remember being over here and all these watchtowers and everything. And, you know, it's cool to see the buildings have color. That's good stuff, you know. But that was pretty fun, you know. So people hear reserves, and I don't know how you guys do it, but in the army we have the we have the 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks out of the year training, and there's a lot of units and a lot of people that only do that. But for us, at least over here in Europe, we fell under 7th ARCOM in Europe, and there is so much going on. It's just, you know, you had global war on terror, you had like the majority of the army's deployed personnel at the time for most of the war were reservists because they were just out there all the time. So you had active duty units, they would deploy as a unit, but then they would come back. But most of the people deployed overall were reservists, and it was just all these support guys, movement control teams, all these people. You know, CA was really busy. We had psyops out there. And so I did one Afghanistan deployment as civil affairs that was pretty boring, you know, standing around smoking. I mean, we did some cool missions over there. Like I actually worked with some very shady dudes, you know, that were part of the Taliban shadow government. Um, but yeah, it was Wardak province. We were doing I guess what is interesting about that is this was 2012 to 2013, and this was transition operations. So everybody watched this Afghanistan debacle happen, and it seemed to catch everybody by surprise that was not related to it. But at least us that were there, like 2012, we were sent to Wardak province and Logar province, and they were like, your mission is transition ops. Like, we got to get the American flag and the American dollar off of everything, and we got to get these people to stand up and take care of their own business. So, you know, this was 2012. And so for civil affairs, that meant we had line directors on the district level, like Department of Health and all that. Department of Education, and then we had the big guys on the provincial level, like Ministry of Health, Ministry of Finance, and all that. So pretty big guys that are supposed to be running the show, but at the end of the day, everybody from the bottom up, they just want to keep calling Department of State, USAID. They want to call us, and I mean, you could go into a deep rabbit hole on that, but USAID, they did some really cool stuff out there, but they also did a lot of nanny state stuff where they would just put generators and trailers out there, just giving stuff to guys, building wells, drilling wells for guys, villages. And then when that stuff falls apart, nobody knows how to maintain it. They don't know how to fix it. So it just falls apart. And then 5 years later, they call us out. Hey, we need a new well. We don't have water. Or this doesn't work, you know? And so that part of our job was we were supposed to be the main guy stopping this. And so I was either meeting with district level people or provincial level people, sometimes governors, and a lonely E6 telling them freaking like, no, we're not coming out there to fix your shit. Like like you're the district freaking, you're the mayor of this town. Like this is your job. Like you're not getting our money anymore. Because the big thing was these provincial reconstruction teams. They'd walk out there with suitcases and bags of money, American tax dollars, and just hand them out like a parade. And so our CA unit was stood up by these guys. So they kind of trained us and taught us CA. And then we go over there and see what they did. And so I'd send emails back. I'm like, dude, you guys fucked this place up, man. It's like total nanny state. But I got to get jabs in on them when I can. So that was our main job, was getting the American flag out of it, because this was Obama era, and we were always looking for a way out. Just the political ways, like nobody knew how to do it. So at least the military was focused, like we need to at least start preparing for it. So that was our preparation, was transition operations. Like we got us, we can't just rip them off the system. We got to slowly get them used to dealing with their own people and their own funds. And like they had funding, they had everything was in place. So as an example, a teacher or a school administrator would call me wanting something. They always needed something. And so I'd say, okay, well, you're in this area, here is your director of education. Like, here's his number, call him, tell him I gave you his name, and talk to him. He's the one to talk to. And then 10 minutes later, that guy would call me, that director would call me, and he'd be like, yeah, I got so-and-so wanting this. And I'm like, yeah, that's what they're supposed to do. Now you call this provincial guy that's above you, and there's your funding and whatever else you need, whatever you can't handle. And just in my experience in that area, like the only thing we did was we taught them they had a tribal system that in the American lens was bad, but it worked for them. So we took away their tribal system that's like 10,000 years old and replaced it with kind of a Western corrupt government. And so then our mission started as getting them to work with their own government. And then halfway through and on, it turned into helping people break their own government, because we realized their government was so corrupt. I mean, just in our local district, we'd go down there and we could look at the payroll, and this governor had, I don't know, 30 something people on his payroll. Like 2 of those guys would actually be there on site at any given time. The rest of them we would find out were like his brothers and cousins, and it would be like a maintenance guy, like a flower guy, a toilet guy. And we'd go look at the toilets that the USAID put in a trailer, and there was just shit and piss everywhere because the plumbing stopped years ago. And we're like, all right, well, the toilet guy and the janitor guy is not doing his job, so let's fire him. And so just looking at, and at the same time, Americans, we'd give ourselves shit. It's like, all right, well, in America, our government's pretty bad too. So we'd have fun with that. But I mean, the corruption over there, it's like, it's stuff we only heard about in Africa. And we're seeing it, and we're just like, how is this not in the news every day? Like, they're talking about us transitioning this place. And this is how bad it is. Like, you have to pay off everybody to get anything done. And it got to where, like, I would be meeting with guys who were suspected Taliban, like our HVTs, HCTs, like the secret squirrel human guys. They would read a phone number and do their thing, and they'd be like, this guy's probably Taliban in that area, watch out. And I'd go into a meeting with them, totally CA native dude. I'd put my weapon in the back of the room with everybody else, sit there with my pistol on my chest, and other than that, I'm just at their mercy. And most of the room is probably Taliban, but they would be on the ground dealing with stuff in their tribal way. And again, it's like looking at it through the American lens. It's like, all right, this is not how we would do it. But I would look at it and be like, all right, well, it's funny because here we are 9, 10 years later in America, and it's like people are looking to DC to solve their problems, and it's like, if you're in rural America, that's not the answer, like they don't care about you over there. And it's the same thing I would tell these people in these villages in Afghanistan. It's like, there's no internet or electricity, but they all have computers, and I'm like, what are you guys doing with this stuff? Oh, they send it from Bagram. And I'd have to tell them, like, okay, Bagram they don't care about you. They're not going to help you. Like, and I talked to like directors of education. They'd have new stuff, textbooks and stuff, and firewood for their schools. The Russians deforested the place like crazy. There's like no trees in Logar province. And I'd be like, where'd you get all this stuff? And they're like, oh, so-and-so down the road, he's Taliban, which, by the way, Taliban's not a bad word to them. It just means the enlightened or student or enlightened student. So it's not a bad word to them. It is for us. Guys hear Taliban in the uniform and they get that knee-jerk reaction. I'd be like, oh, he's Taliban. Okay. And he brought you all this stuff. He's like, yeah, I've been complaining. You wouldn't give it to me. Nobody would give it to me, but he brought it to me in a week. And I'm like, the Taliban's doing civil affairs. Like, that's how adjusted they are. And I'm sorry to say it worked, and it's like the way we would look at it was like, we didn't know when we were leaving, but we're like, okay, we are leaving. They got to figure something out. Their corrupt system is failing them. And it's like legit blizzard season is coming, because there's some really elevated places in Afghanistan. People don't realize where, you can't even boil water. There's some high places. And, we'd go out to these places and look at their disaster management plans, and they got nothing, no firewood, nothing. And we're like, how are you guys going to survive the winter? And we get like a shipment of blankets to them or something. They'd be like, oh, the Taliban's going to help us out. And I'm like, all right, well, that's bad for the American flag. If it was on CNN, it would be bad. But I'm going home to my warm base. You're on your own. I mean, we're talking about villages up in the mountains. It's like, do what you got to do, man. So anyway, the whole point to all that was fast forward to this Afghanistan pullout. I'm watching it on the news and I'm like, yeah, if you've been there and dealt with these people, you saw this coming. It was a shock to see all the stuff we left behind and just how bad it was. But nobody had a plan, and no, there was no plan. And it's like, I get a lot of hate for it, but I think it would have been that bad under Trump too. I think he would have cared a little bit more, and there would have been a lot more hilarious tweets about it, calling out which general screwed it up. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's fair to put it on either president, because these are all military leaders, trained and bred leaders. And so I really, before this, we were talking about generals and the higher ranking guys. Like, when I watched the Afghanistan shit show, I was immediately thinking, like, where was the battle space commander or the sergeant majors of those units or the first sergeants of the companies? Like, where were all of those guys? Because we get shitty orders all the time. That. But it is their jobs, and it's your job as a soldier to be like, we got all this shit sitting over here. What are we going to do? Like, I would make stupid decisions every now and then, and privates would call me out, So it's like, I don't know. I don't want to pin it on anybody, but I was just thinking, like, all right, well, I didn't like the president at the time either, but what about all these other levels of leadership all the way down to the soldiers? It's like nobody thought about this at all. Like, so yeah, that was and then I thought back to my mission over there, and I'm like, yeah, all right. Afghanistan was just, I don't know. It was pretty bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of talking about how Afghanistan all came to a close because that would be a whole nother conversation.
It's like
Uh,
4 hours worth.
yeah, exactly. I mean, in all honesty, that's how I got started in this live streaming was that specific topic. But yeah, I mean the Afghanistan pullout. I mean, that was Trump's plan also. I think maybe they probably, if he was in office, they would have executed it better. You know, like not shutting down Bagram Air Force Base. You know,
Yeah.
you need to operate out of that to evacuate people. But you know, just like the fall of Vietnam, you know, you had huge convoys of NVA troops coming down the main highways, just ripe for the, you know, a B-52 strike, and it never happened. You know, and then here you had huge convoys of Taliban army moving from one major city to the next. No U.S. airstrikes or anything like that. So, you know, once you see the Afghan army, you know, coupled with, you know, the corruption that you're talking about, you know, there's no surprise there that all fell apart. So, but
Yeah, and you know, it's the level of soldiering from, you know, from when I saw like Ramadi, the Iraqi army guys, the Iraqi police, and then later the Afghan police, and then we had local militias out there too. So you had the Afghan police, the Afghan army, and then you had I can't remember the acronym I used, but villages had their own militias. And those guys were pretty badass. So the CA money we did give out, the CERP funds, the critical response funds, it would usually be to those guys because they were local level militia guys for that village, kind of like village police, and they were making stuff happen. Like in Wardak province, there was a Department of Women's Affairs, a Dawa lady. She was like the first woman Department of Women's Affairs lady out there, 20-something-year-old girl. She got executed pretty quickly once they found out about her. And then the local militia, I was talking to some of the CIs and some of the secret squirrel guys, and they're like, yeah, they think they know who did it. And these guys went out there and they had bodies hanging within a week. So again, from the American lens, that's brutal, crazy stuff. But you know, it's something that our dudes sucked at was showing what war is really like, especially over there. It's like, you know, it's brutal. And yeah, with you know, but most of the locals that we worked with were you know, I'd say it was 50-50. We had a lot of the green on blue attacks happening, and there was a lot of we were kind of freaked out about who would turn on us. You know, some of that was because of us violating cultural stuff. I'm not saying letting them rape boys and stuff like that, but just some basic cultural stuff. You could tensions are already high, and you could definitely mess with those people and get shot that way. Not like anybody deserved it, but you know, there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make it on the news. But you know, for the most part, it was really just trying to take these people and bring them forward into time. It's like I think if we would have kind of empowered their own tribal system a little bit better, and then just brought it in a little more, and could like reined it in a little bit, like, okay, you can't just go out there executing people, you know. But we kind of just tried to force like our style of military on them. So, you know, it worked during our revolution. You know, Washington, the Continental Army, they got all the drunken freaking pirates out of the woods and got them a little bit of discipline and stuff, but it doesn't seem like it works in these other areas, you know. And then with the corruption, so you got some of the few who really care and they're dedicated, and then they come to me like, dude, I haven't been paid in a year. And so it's like, uh, you know, I got to tell them like, well, you're fighting for your country. You know, they're like, well, you get paid. Give me some of your money. You know, and I would actually go find open connexes of shit in the middle of the night and grab a bunch of magazines and hand it to them, because at the time they had M16A2s, and they're like, you have 12 magazines. I don't have. I have two. give me some of yours. And I'm like, I can't give you my shit, dude. But then later on, I'd come back and I'd have full magazines for him. Like, here, take this shit, dude, you know, because, yeah, I'm like, I can go back to my American base after this is over. Like, you need it, man.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. The parallels there about like the end days of South Vietnam and Afghanistan. Same thing. Just corrupt governments not getting supplies to the frontline troops. Guys going outside the wire with talking about the indigenous forces with the bare minimum of ammunition and stuff like that. It's just it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and they had similar stories, you know, like they had some of their conventional forces, they had a lot of corruption and trust issues. And then you'd hear the stories about like the mountain yards that would crush it and would do anything. And we had plenty of stories like that with regular Afghan dudes. Like we had 4 ODA groups at Maidenshar, Fob Airborne, where I went to later. And those guys, they had some their Afghan like special forces dudes, like they were awesome dudes, you know. And this was the transition ops, so it was really like advisory roles. So like the 10th group guys from Stuttgart, from we talked a lot with them because we were both from Germany. And they're like, yeah, dude, we go out, we can't do anything. We got to let them run it, plan it, lead it all. And we just got to sit back and watch, you know. And usually they had pretty good stories. He's like, oh, they went out and fucked these people up tonight. You know, it was good. And then, or yeah, we needed air support and couldn't get it because some kind of freaking political issue, you know. It's kind of like, I don't know. We were talking about the higher level stuff, you know, politics. Like it's, if you want to, on the tactical level, I think our military is very advanced. It's just when politics get involved, and we saw that with Benghazi and what's the Black Hawk Down movie about in Northeast Africa?
Yeah, Somalia.
Yeah, the Horn of Africa. Bombs work, airstrikes work, you know.
Yeah. Okay, well let's wrap up your Afghanistan deployment. What'd you do after that?
Yeah. So then, I was let's see. So I came in 2003. So that was 8 to 9 years later. I pretty much had saved up some money and was not wanting to just depend on the army. So I went back to school. I got a associate's degree in management stuff, whatever it's called now. Got a bachelor's degree in what I was really passionate about, which was exercise science. So like fitness and all that stuff. And then I opened a training business in Germany, actually. So by then I got my German residency, not citizenship, but basically just like a green card to live and work here. And so just I did like a fitness boot camp over here for a couple years. I was still doing the reserve thing and I was still pretty active. And that's when we kind of every couple months I would go back and forth between some Eastern European country, doing like some just low level meeting with provincial governors and stuff. And a lot of it was training. And so, yeah, kind of just did the standard reservist / civilian guy stuff for a couple years. And then, yeah, I retired in 2018. So I would say around 2016, our European stuff and Africa stuff, like I didn't go to Africa. That was the one theater I missed. But all that stuff started to die down for us. And at the time, like my back was messed up. I had a lot of issues since the Ramadi deployment. So I was pretty much limping around the reserves all the time. Like, yeah, I'm good. You know, just a crusty freaking sergeant, mad at everything for no reason. And so around 2015, 2016, we have to do our yearly doctor's appointments and checkups, like the PHA, the readiness stuff. And I had the same doctor all the time in Landstuhl I'd go to. And he just kept asking me, he's like, he would look at my back MRI, which I had 3 slip discs still from my Ramadi days in 05. And like, I don't know if people know, but a slipped or a herniated disc, there's no real way to fix that besides surgery. There's a lot of surgeries they can do, but I never got any. But really, you don't recover from that. It's basically just management, pain management, core workouts, yoga and stuff, just to kind of not herniate them again or make it worse again. So I had my L5 would always be poking on one of my nerves. And so I had like sciatic pain and all that good stuff, the standard grunt pain. But anyway, my doctor was like, every year, he was like, dude, do you want to keep doing this stuff? Like, you're still rucking and wearing IBAs and all this stuff. And every year I was like, I'm fine, man. It's the reserves. I just take ibuprofen and suck it up. And sometimes on the missions, I'm in pain, but whatever. And then once our mission started to die down, I started to find other things to do and was starting to look at getting out of the army. And I learned about, I never planned on doing a med board, which is like a medical retirement from the reserves. But I had buddies that retired from the reserves. And, if you retire from the reserves regular, like you get like half the pay of your rank, and you get that at like 65 minus your deployment time. Well, for us, my last deployment was 2012, and they don't count that anymore. So for the Army, they just made a decision. Anything after a certain time, they don't take it off of your 65 years of age. So for me, that meant I wouldn't see my first 50% retirement until like 64, 65. So that combined with the doctor saying like, dude, you can get out of this. I was like, yeah, but then I'm one of those guys. And then, yeah, it just all wore on me. And, oh, you still hear me?
Yeah, I'm here. We got you.
Okay. That was I guess my headphone messed up. Okay. Yeah. So I just gave in. I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do this anymore. I was 18 years in when the med board came through. So, I wanted to stay in past 20, um, but luckily I didn't, because all this corona vaccination stuff came out, and that's another rabbit hole to go into. But I'll just say, if they gave me the choice to do it or not, I would have said goodbye either way. So, yeah, I did a medical retirement, and yeah, that worked out, so 18 years. I'm pretty happy with it, and I'm still half the year in Germany, so I'm kind of back and forth. We talked about the Grunt Proof and survival game stuff, so I have civilian work in the States, and I'm kind of all over the place now. It's pretty cool.
So one of the thing I like to do at the end of the interview with warfighters is just kind of talk about like how the military, sets you up in life and like what you're doing now as your civilian occupation. So, I mean, if you're comfortable about talking about any of that stuff, like what you do for a living now, if not, that's fine. We can start wrapping it up. But
Yeah, sure. I got into quality assurance and inspection, like weld inspection, pipeline inspections. And really, I had no idea about any of that stuff. I had some family members kind of get me into that world. And on the CA world, we learned a little bit of like QA style stuff, just big picture evaluating like quality packages and stuff. So I started getting some certs and getting into the welding world and inspection and all that. And yeah, so that's kind of what I mostly do in the civilian world. Like I'll go over there and do shutdowns for a third party inspection company, and it's really like, um, I can weld. I could do stick welding, but I'm not a welder, and I'm not a certified welder. I'm just an inspector. So nobody gets mad about that. Welders are hardcore about that. So and I do try to be humble about it. I'm like, dude, I'm just an inspector. I know what to look for. You're the freaking craftsman. So, you know, yeah, but that's pretty cool. I'll go over there and do shutdowns in refineries. And one thing about the trades in America is if you like the camaraderie of the combat arms world, that's where you can really find the closest thing to it. Like welders and pipe fitters, those guys are awesome. Um, they'll work in any kind of weather, doing all the toughest jobs, stuff that a lot of people would never think of doing. And I get to work with those guys half the year. So Um, yeah, well, because of the COVID stuff, it's been a little slow, but I'd say typically half the year I'm back and forth doing that, like month or 2 month long shutdowns, and then just kind of ramping up the grunt proof stuff. You know, gear testing, adventure, and the grunt proof survival games. You know, so I have property out there in Northern California. It's like the perfect terrain to do stuff like that, like a real seer challenge. Um, we've all seen survival shows and all that. So at least I haven't been able to find anybody that's done the evasion and escape part and psyops and all that. So that's something I'm really trying to get. I'm trying to grow that and make that like kind of a big thing. And then hopefully eventually work that into my overall grunt proof brand. And I have some, like, I did sniper school in Germany, like an MTT course, and we did some pretty seer heavy training. And I got to implement what I could in Ramadi, Iraq, doing hide sites and all that. But I do have some actual more military seer guys and doctrinally trained guys that I want to bring out there and eventually start doing training. So we'll have the survival games, and then I would also like that would be kind of like the show, you know, bringing the big guys, the experienced guys and creators out there to battle. But I also want to start doing some training and have kind of like a culminating event. So civilians who are interested in it, whatever, they come out, they get some good training from some qualified dudes, and then at the end we drop them off in the woods and and do like an FTX for them. And
That's awesome.
I don't know if we're gonna make that a. I don't know if I'll do videos on that, maybe just for promotion's sake, but I don't think I'm gonna be, you know, the survival games. That's kind of what I want to do with like the big dogs. You know, take the
Well,
experts and some of the YouTube guys and make them fight it out and make a show out of that. But
well,
the civilians, I think that'll be kind of a private thing.
if I could just add my 2 cents, man, you should definitely film that if you do that training. And the reason I say that is because that one Shepherd organization that I go and volunteer and teach at, they were relatively unknown, even though it's been around for decades.
Hmm.
They just didn't do a very good job of advertising it. And then when I went up there, I started documenting every time I went up there, and then just slowly but surely, the attendance started gaining momentum. And now it's like they're sold out semesters, like almost every single one of them. So absolutely, like YouTube is the best advertisement in terms of getting the word out for training and stuff like that. So
Yeah, that's actually how I heard about you. It was I found one shepherd first, and
I
I
was
was
there,
like,
right?
"This is cool, man." It's like these are regular dudes out there with machine guns and miles gear. This is awesome. You know, it's like what a dream. And
Yeah.
then somewhere your name popped up in there. It might have been your video, but either way, like I connected the two and found you. It was like, yeah, that's cool stuff. You know, there's so much of that stuff going on in America. And like you said, I think a lot of them could tap into YouTube more. Like I'm kind of trying to work my way up in YouTube and get some stuff out there. But yeah, this is like Bill Stoker that was in the survival games. You'd probably like to talk to him. He was a Marine, and then he came over to the dark side with us. But
Is he is he a National Guard first sergeant?
no, he's active duty still.
Oh, he is. Okay. Yeah,
Yeah.
because I know a lot of Marines when they get out, they end up going National Guard.
Mm.
Just they I'm not talking bad about the
Vacation.
National Guard. It's just they have looser standards, right? So it's like for a long period of time, like the Marine Corps was anti-tattoo. If you could see it in PT gear. So it's like they weren't allowing those Marines to re-enlist or go into the reserves and stuff. So like National Guard was like, yeah, come on in. Former
Yeah.
Marine infantry, yeah. Hell yeah. So
Well, shit. They used to say for us, any of our former Marines would be like, "Yeah, I was in the Marines. I needed a break, so I came over to the Army." Even
yeah.
active duty infantry, they'd laugh at us. You know, it's like standard.
I gotta laugh. I'm gonna tell the story, man. With they our instructor. So at every like Marine reserve unit, you have what's called I&I personnel. So one of the grunt units I was at, the I major a National Guard recruiter reached out to him and was like, "Hey, I wanted to talk to your Marines that are about to finish up their reserve commitment, about going into the National Guard afterwards." And the I major probably had some second guesses, but he's like, "Okay, yeah, no problem." So we let this guy come in to speak to the company, and he gives this spiel, like, "Hey, if you're about to get out of the, Marine Corps infantry reserves, and you want to come join the National Guard, like, this is what we can offer you, and this, that, and the other." And then at the end of it, he's like, starts talking about like, "Oh, yeah, in the National Guard, we have our own like special forces, Green Berets, and those who are interested, you can go into this program." And like, one Marine was like, "Wait a minute, we can cross deck, on our current contract and go into the Army National Guard and go to special forces." And like the National Guard recruiter's like, "Yeah." We lost like two of our best pipe hitters, freaking left our Marine Reserve Infantry unit, and they went, and now they're Special Forces, Army National Guard.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, "Yeah, I got a good call, sir. Good call."
Yeah, good on those recruiters. They do how to get guys.
Yep.
Come over here, man. You can have a beard. You don't have to do that silly Marine stuff. You can walk around in civvies. You can drink on duty. I mean, come on, man.
But yeah, I know a lot of Marines that left active duty or finished their time in the reserves, and they end up going to the National Guard, and they love it. It's not that it's better or anything. It's just it's a different environment. So.
Yeah, I wish I could have gotten back to the States and got a taste of our National Guard, because pretty much all my service was overseas. So even regular Army in the States, I didn't get a taste of. I mean, most of my Army schools were in the States, and I did a lot of them in the reserves. Like, it's one thing about the reserves, at least in the Army, like you go to schools like crazy, and it's weird. We can get whatever school we want anytime. Like, I'd already done airborne. I wasn't interested in air assault, but we were sending guys to these schools like crazy, and they would pencil whip their PT scores. They'd fail and come back, and there's like guys on active duty that can't get in, but most of my schools were in the States, and that was the only taste I got of the Army, the American Army, like CONUS. And usually I was kind of bummed out. I don't know if it was reserves in America or the duty station I was at, but I was usually like, all right, I want to go back to Germany. Like, we would usually have, it'd be like a whole bunch of different reservists from all over the military. So we'd have a couple German guys, from our units, and then we'd have a couple people like the Puerto Ricans, like from Puerto Rico. For some reason, we usually got along better with them. And I think it might have just been the international thing, because like going stateside and dealing with like Americans, like, and it's nothing against these guys, but by then, when I was active duty, like every E5 and above had a combat patch on, and they had been somewhere, at least heard bombs and stuff. And then way later on, a lot of those guys had gotten out completely. So you started to see in the Army, we have the combat patch. So you started to see like slick sleeves, people with nothing on their shoulder. And a lot of these schools in the reserves are taught by those people. I don't know if it's a personality thing, because I could never teach these freaking schools. It just didn't interest me. So that was a major thing, was, me and my German buddies, we'd go, and we're like the alcoholic German troublemakers. They'd always call us the Germans. Like, we're Americans in the American Army, but they call us the Germans, because we didn't fit in, and it's hard to say exactly what, but I think that was one thing, was like anybody with the first AD patch, if you had that combat patch, we'd usually look at each other and be like, "Where were you? Okay, yeah, we'll be all right." We can steal horses together, but if they didn't have a combat patch, we were like, "Yeah, let's watch that guy. He might follow rules, man. We gotta watch that guy. He's gonna tell you to get your hair cut, like this is the Army or something."
Yeah, it's weird seeing like sergeants and even staff sergeants now that don't have like campaign medals and combat action ribbons and stuff in the Marine Corps reserves. We've just gotten to that point. Matter of fact, I was just at this past weekend. I was just at a Army base doing some training. My Marines were doing some live fire ranges, and we drove past an old like set up fob on this Army base. You could tell like the Army was using it as a notional fob for some training for Iraq, but the stuff is all like dilapidated. Like you could tell it hasn't been used in years, and it looks like it's stuff from back in Vietnam now. Like it's just that much time has passed and elapsed that, you know, like our generation, man, of warfighters is has come and gone. These are like the remnants of that training.
Yeah, it's strange, you know, because they've drawn down the bases a lot over here in Germany. So some of the major ones are still around, like Ramstein, K-Town, Baumholder is still there, Grafenir is still there, but they've drawn down the smaller satellite bases. And it's like weird. You know, I got my retiree ID card, so every now and then I go there to do whatever. And it's strange because you know, the global world terror that was our life for our generation.
Yeah.
And it was like it was everything in the news. It was what everybody talked about. 9/11 was always in people's minds, and it's weird to see the new generation come in. It's like, because, you know, I'm not even 40 yet, but I still feel like one of those crusty old timers, like, well, back in my day, you know, like you said about going out without your full battle gear. It's like, I have some stories of going out to OPs with like nothing by myself in the middle of the night, you know, and I tell younger scouts that when I'm working with them in Afghanistan in 2012, and they're just like, they either don't believe me, they're like, whatever, you reserve sergeant, you pogue, you know, or they're just like, man, that's crazy, you know, and it's like, yeah. And now it's all drawn down. A lot of the seasoned guys are gone, and a lot of them denied this shot and got kicked out or are getting kicked out. But it's strange times, you know. You mentioned the volunteer force. It's, yeah, like our numbers are going down and standards are going down. It's getting weird. It's like, what a time to have a possible World War III.
I know, right? Well, so we're at just over 2 hours. I want to take some questions from the audience, because when we do these interviews, like, it's all about whoever I'm interviewing. Like, I don't take questions from the audience until the very end. So I want to highlight some of these and just, you know, if you don't mind answering some of them.
Sure.
Let's see. First one we got says the employment of anti-tank weaponry on the squad levels is something I've taken note of during the Russian-Ukraine conflict. What do y'all think?
Yeah, I don't think people could appreciate motivated grunts on the ground with anti-tank weaponry than today, you know. And it's strange because we saw the Taliban wipe out our best vehicles. The Mujahideen did the same to the Russians back then. Like I said, in Ramadi, our best vehicles got taken out. But yeah, you're really getting to see what infantry guys with the right equipment can do.
Yep. And I got nothing to add upon that. It's just the power of the individual infantryman is almost endless. He has the capability of, you know, with the right weapon system, taking out the most modern main battle tank, you know, the highest flying attack helicopter and aircraft. I mean, it's crazy what a proficiently trained and well-equipped modern infantryman is capable of doing on the modern day battlefield. So, yeah, this Ukraine conflict here has been very eye-opening for a lot of people, I think, and you know, it's going to be key moving forward on weapon systems. So, all right, next one. Any job you wish you had done in the military?
Yeah, you know, as a grunt, and I think I did pretty well in the grunt world. I always look back and wish I would have tried some of the soft stuff, Ranger or Special Forces. And it's not to say to think that I did I would have made it through, nothing like that. It's just not trying it, that's something that bugs me. So yeah, if you're a young dude and you want to do hardcore stuff, and if you do kind of well in the infantry, do it, man. Go out there and just try it. That's one thing. I wish I would have just tried it. I had buddies go through in basic and went through Ranger right after jump school and made it in. And then we had a lot of guys after Ramadi. They were tired of big army and they were like, I'm going SF. And so I was working on getting out of active duty, just being done with the army. And they were rucking and getting in better shape and getting ready for SFAS. And the ones that I know that actually went, they made it through. So yeah, that's I think my career was pretty awesome, but that's definitely one thing I regret. I wish I would have gone and at least tried the stuff. If I would have failed, whatever. But
All right. Was there any equipment in your career that was adequate for the mission, or how did the evolution of gear affect your service?
wow, man. Yeah, and Ramadi, some of the stuff we got was new and cutting edge. So we had a laser night sight with a floodlight, an IR floodlight for the 203. I don't even know if they still field it anymore. It was called a PSQ-18 Alpha. And this thing, once you zeroed it, wherever, as long as you were in the maximum range, like less than 400 meters, wherever I put that laser night sight, that's where my grenade would go. So HEDP or HE. If I wanted to shoot it into a window, I'd put that dot on the window and it would go in, or door or whatever for HEDP. And then the floodlight was insane. This was 2005 time. So we had the pack fours, and then the other guys had the PEQ 2 alphas. That was like the larger one that had a big floodlight on it. You guys still had the pack fours duct taped to your freaking hand guards.
It was probably a PEC 2. We had PEC 2s for a while.
Okay, yeah.
We had PEC 2s until they got replaced by the PEC 16s.
Oh, I haven't heard that one yet. Okay. Yeah, but we got the bigger ones that had just this insane floodlight, but I had the one for the grenade launcher and a floodlight. So if we were in a field at night, and still most of the Joes had the 7 Bravos or 7 Deltas, and only the leaders and above, team leaders and above, got the 14s, the monocular. So we could stand in a field, and if we were suspicious, I would just light up the whole freaking field with this thing, And then, so the evolution of gear, that's a funny one because, yeah, we saw a lot of really cool stuff come out, but I think all the classics are still the best. Like, it all comes down to the individual soldier and how proficient he is. So like the best night sight doesn't matter if it's not zeroed or if the guy can't practice with it, because you can hip fire your assigned weapon if your night sight is zeroed, and you can hit whatever you want, but you have to train that, which means ammo and time and all that. And then like the Clue, they're using these javelins in Ukraine. The command launch unit is insane. Like I'm not sure if they've improved that or not, but from what we used way back in the day, I don't think I can give out the distance, but you could see some stuff really clearly pretty far away. And it was a light enough unit to bring to an OP. You make the private carry it, and you could have that out on an OP, and it was a mobile site to use in addition to what you had. I'll say this though, we with civil affairs, we did a really cool training exercise with some scouts over here in Germany, and we drove all the way up to Latvia, like a convoy from Germany all the way through the Baltics up to Latvia. And we had so we had the Blue Force trackers, and then there's a communication system that those all use. Can't remember the name, but it's, military internet computer stuff, all this fancy technology. And my reserve unit, my commander, who actually helped me with the survival games, he was like, we have to learn all this stuff. We're going to get up to speed on this stuff because this is what active duty's using. We got to be badass on it. no freaking WhatsApp or cell phones. And we're like, all right, cool. Yep, we'll do what we got to do. I go meet with the scout platoon 2 days before we're rolling to Latvia. They're like, all right, they're doing their rant brief. Primary means of communication is WhatsApp, and then we'll do cell phone after that. and I'm like, are you guys using your Blue Force trackers? They're like, no, they don't work, man. So we're like, the reserve unit is more high speed. And I don't know if you saw the news story, but the Russians apparently took out some cell phone towers and stuff, and it killed their own communications technology for a little bit because they were dependent on those towers, that internet, the 3G. And it's like, some of my buddies that's been out for a while, they laughed at that. And I'm like, dude, in the Army, we're using WhatsApp and Signal. So yeah.
That's too
So
funny.
I call that the de-evolution of technology.
All right, we got are you related to a Colonel Cecil Randall by chance?
No.
All right, I think that's it. I don't see any more. So, well, Randall, this has been a good time, man. I appreciate you coming on and doing this and talking about your military career with us.
Yeah, sure. It's been fun. It's good to be back on with you.
Yeah, brother. So, guys, once again, if you are not aware, Randall has his own YouTube channel called Grunt Proof. And he's got a whole host of things, but primarily he tests, survival gear, military gear out in like no shit wilderness, like real nasty conditions. So if you guys are into that, make sure you go check it out. He's also got the survival games, which has been uploaded pretty recently. It's a awesome SEER challenge. And man, I look forward to the next season because it's a great concept, and I can't believe nobody else has caught on to that yet. I'm sure they're in the process of stealing it, like you said last time. So
yeah.
But nonetheless, man, that's a great interview. I guess we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up, guys. You have any final thing to say, Randall, before we close out?
No, that's it. Again, thanks for having me on, and yeah, you guys just go check out the Grunt Proof stuff, and I appreciate it. I'm just happy to be having fun on here, and some people enjoy it. That's always cool.
All right, guys. Well, that's it. Keep fighting a good fight, and we'll see you on the next one.